Welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Today is Friday, November 30th, 2018. Already through another month of the year. Tomorrow will be December 1st, our last month of the calendar year before we head into 2019. We got a lot to talk about tonight, so let's go ahead and get started over at SPACEWEATHER.com. Solar wind speed sitting at, well, let's get the current events. There we go. 313.9 kilometers per second. That's an updated speed. They are lowering a little bit. Now, we are looking at the minor chance for a G1 storm on December 1st and 2nd. So they've moved this back. But NOAA says there is a 70% chance of this. So we will keep our eyes on that. Right now, we are looking at a low solar wind speed. So the calm before the storm, so to speak. And the sun remains blank. That'll be day number 198. We are 2 away from that 200 mark of spotless days in 2018, guys. And that'll be nearly 60% of the year without sunspots. Take a look at the TCI. This is coming in at 37 billion watts. So it is continuing to decline. We've been hovering around that 40 billion watts to even 45 billion watts. But here recently, we've seen the TCI go down just a little bit. And take a look at our KP indices. Looking at it right now, it is 0 and a max of 2, and which is probably part of the reason why we've been on quake watch here today. Taking a look at the coronal hole that is passing Earth facing now, but look behind it. Weak corona behind it right now as well in the near the equatorial region of the sun. Let's go ahead and take a look at it, the SDO in motion. And like I said, just a very weak corona. As this coronal hole is passing by, we start to see the beginnings of another one possibly forming in the very southern region of the sun. Not enough to affect the Earth's magnetic field. I want to grab your attention out here, folks. We have a plasma loop here in the eastern limb. Take a look at this. I'll try to zoom in as much as I can. I'll leave the link in the description. Look at that. So we have possible plasma loops, filament right here, possible release. I love it when we catch these things real time. Obviously, this is a little bit behind, but before the show tonight, I wasn't even looking in this direction. This has caught my eye, so very interesting on the sun. While we're out here looking at the far eastern limb, we don't see any sunspots or any kind of active regions. We do see another minor coronal hole beginning to appear, and that is very minor, but it begins to form right around that point of the video feed. And let's go over to Space Weather Live, where we can look at the other side of the sun. We'll get the whole picture, not just the front facing part of this. And here we go, animated this, zoom it in. And I can tell right before we even get this in motion, we have multiple areas of coronal holes. That's Earth facing now, but check out this monster of a sunspot that is directly behind us right now on the other side of the sun. That is probably one of the most active regions that I've seen in 2018. We will continue to eyeball that. That could be a Phallica as well, but we'll find out. This is probably about 10 days away before we get a better idea what's going to happen when it does come around the eastern limb. So more space weather to monitor. I'll tell you guys, this has been a very busy day today. Even things with the sun being quiet is still considered a busy day. TSI has dropped back down to 1360.677. I do believe on Wednesday evening we reported it at a 1360.70. This was also for November 21st is when the last TSI reading has come in. And like I said, we're busy tonight, and we'll start off with the strong and shallow earthquake that we all heard about today. We are still experiencing aftershocks right now, according to the USGS. Several aftershocks. Last I checked, we were looking at a total for the day, just counting by hand at the 6 o'clock hour Eastern time, we were probably close to 100 aftershocks at that point. But let's get into the stats of this. According to the USGS, the epicenter was located about 2.6 miles of Point McKenzie. Also 7.9 miles north of Anchorage, population of 300,000 people. A lot of people felt this. There was a tsunami warning, but that was lifted. I want to thank Mari also for jumping on live and giving everybody a breaking news alert. And that's the type of thing that Mari and I, we're a team here. And when breaking news comes out, if I'm away, she's going to be here to get it out to you guys. So again, shout out to Mari. Thanks for catching that today. But this was the big news, was the earthquake in Alaska. And we're talking several aftershocks. Major infrastructure damage across Anchorage. Look at this. This is a library. The tiles, the ceiling grid has fallen out. Several thousand people without power right now. I believe I heard the number as high as, here it is, 20,000 people had their power knocked out originally. Lots of prayers, lots of thoughts going out, but just the damage from this is, to me, just shows you how much shaking this was from. This was a 7.0, less than 30 miles deep. And I got more pictures here. Go to Twitter. I'm going to leave these links in the description. I mean, chunks of the road disappearing. I want to show you some video footage of indoors as well. There's a building on fire. Not sure if this is related to the earthquake, maybe a gas explosion. Here's more video footage of that sinkhole going up the ramp. And that's not the only one. I'm sure you've all have seen several Twitter accounts today showing these same images all over the place. Here we are. More just chunks of the highway disappearing due to this earthquake, the ground shifting. Here we have footage of a courtroom. Look at the pictures jumping off the walls. My God. Scary times indeed. If I was this lady, I would have been hiding under the table the entire time. Well, folks, we don't recommend you risk your safety. I know this is an amazing situation, and you know, as easy as it is these days with our cell phones to capture a video. Here's a news studio room, KTVA's newsroom. Outdoor footage. Look, the car, you can see the car shaking a little bit. I'll move that up a little bit. Unreal. So the earthquakes continue to fall, or continue to rock the area as well. Like I said, we had several aftershocks after this earthquake. In fact, my God, here we go. A little bit more damage. This was the picture that I've seen a lot of on the internet and social media today. And I want to go ahead and just take a quick look, guys, just to give you a kind of an idea. Big Lake, Alaska right now has been getting the most aftershocks. We're only talking about 2.2 magnitude, but these are on land. They're not in the water. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, over a dozen, maybe 2 dozen just in the last half hour at Big Lake, Alaska. Everything that I'm looking at right now on my device is Big Lake, Alaska. Folks, there's got to be at least 100 of these. And Big Lake has been the recipient of the majority of these aftershocks. We see some 3s, some 4s. Immediately after the earthquake, we were talking about 5.7 aftershocks, talking about 3.6 aftershocks now. So they're slightly but slowly going down, but still just amazing footage and kind of a shock, obviously, no pun intended. There was some really good footage of a grocery store where things were just coming off the shelves. But this is some serious shaking, folks. Lots of people have been talking about this today. There's tons of coverage on this, so it literally is saturated everywhere. I've seen a lot of good information today. I've seen some crappy information, but for the most part, everybody's being pretty responsible about how we're going about reporting on this. Again, our thoughts and prayers to the folks in Alaska. And, you know, this is just the United States, especially the West Coast. You know, during this aftershocks, we were experiencing minor earthquakes on Hawaii, near the Hawaii volcano. So, you know, we had 3 or 4 of those as well. We had a couple of earthquakes on the west coast of California. and one in Oregon. They're not actually even showing up here on the USGS, so not that I'm surprised about that, but on QuakeFeed, if those of you are not familiar with QuakeFeed, that's an app you can get on your phone, among other apps, lots of great apps that talk about earthquakes. But we also had earthquakes in Oregon, California, and then we had a couple weird ones, one in Kansas, one in Idaho and Wyoming. So very active, I thought, today on the western part of our country. And then there was an earthquake here in Hawaii. There was at least 2 of them at 2.0 at the volcano. So very, very active day across the globe. Earthquakes, snow, you name it. It's been very busy this week with flooding and fires being extinguished. Sometimes an hour is just not enough. And also, while we're on the topic of seismic activity, Mayotte once again is showing us signs of a volcanic phenomena. And I'll give Rob some credit on this because he's been talking about this for a few weeks now. He has been watching this particular volcano, and I just wanted to bring this up tonight. A rare earthquake swarm started near the small Indian Ocean island of Mayotte, the oldest volcano in the Comoros Basin. This was back on the 10th of May 2018 is when it started, and we are still seeing seismic activity there to this date. According to the BRGM, the France-based geological agency serving the territory, the first quake felt by the population hit on 23/19 May 10th had a magnitude of 4.5. The appearance of this earthquake swarm in May in 2018 took scientists by surprise. Geological knowledge of the swarm zone is limited, but clear understanding of the phenomenon is emerging as observations continue. Different hypotheses as to their causes have been investigated as well. And it just goes into the history of the swarm of activity that we are seeing in this region. And, you know, like I said, Rob, you've talked about this quite a bit with me in the chats, and I do believe you are right about this one and the future eruption of this volcano and just how soon. So in my mind, it's not a matter of if, but when at this point. So we'll keep our eyes on it. Nothing major yet, but still enough to get the attention of scientists all over. These observations, therefore, back up the hypothesis of a combination of tectonic and volcano effects accounting for a geological phenomenon involving seismic sequence and a volcanic phenomenon. So they keep mentioning volcanic phenomenon, like this is going to be leading up to something here soon. We'll keep our eyes on that. The link will be in the description. And we will talk about the West once again. California, a dynamic Pacific storm is delivering heavy to excessive rainfall, mountain snow, gusty winds, and high surf to California. This system will evolve into a major multifaceted storm Friday through the weekend with severe weather in the south and heavy snow in parts of the Midwest. This is a bizarre situation on radar. I was looking at this before the show. We are looking at this storm system right now across the Midwest and the northern plains. We're seeing snow, and of course Northern California is now getting another outbreak of weather. And then you look at the it looks like jet streams of moisture going across the south, in the far south and in the very tip of the beginning of the south. So 2 regions of the south are getting rain soaked right now. We'll get more into that. But it says here, heavy rain and mountain snow is spreading across California and will bring the risk of flooding, mudslides, and travel delays into Friday. Measurable rain is expected in the state's largest cities, including Los Angeles, San Diego, San Francisco, and Sacramento. Mandatory evacuations have already been issued for people living in the Holy Fire burn scar area due to the potential for flooding, mudslides, while those in Malibu near the Woolsey fire scars have been put on alert as well for a potential evacuation. And here we are talking about the 10-day precipitation totals here. Look at this, guys, 10 inches in some spots. This is a lot of rain for areas that's been ravaged by smoke. So the rain replaced the smoke early last week, but how much rain has fallen since then? Over 10 inches for coastal North Bay Peaks, Santa Cruz Mountains, and Big Sur Peaks. It's a lot of rain, folks. Want to give a shout out to hopefully a new subscriber tonight. His name is Dylan. Hope you're enjoying the show so far. Several roads across the Golden State have already been closed following debris flows near the burn scars of recent wildfires, including the Ferguson Fire, Camp Fire, and Holy Fire. Cold front brought heavy rain, isolated thunderstorms, and even dime-sized hail to portions of Santa Barbara County on November 29th, capping off a two-day rain event that broke Santa Maria record and dumped more than 4 inches of rain on some county mountains. The storm broke an 112-year-old rainfall record at Santa Maria Public Airport. Again, I find it funny that, you know, every record that is recorded is from an airport instrument. I'll talk about that too later, about how DC measures the majority of their records snowfall at the airport, where there's more jet exhaust, where the runways are a little more heated because of the jet exhaust and the fuel that that is being burnt on the runways. So anyway, that's another story. The story will continue to talk about the active weather that we are experiencing across the four-quarter states into the Midwest, across the plains. We'll leave the link in the description if you guys want to check out more. There is more to this storm system. Potential of heavy snow and heavy rain as well. Localized flooding of parts across the middle Mississippi River and also near the Florida Panhandle as well. Winter weather will also be a major component to this mid-latitude cyclone to the north and west of the occluded surface low. Winter storm watches and warnings are currently in effect from central Montana to northern Iowa, with the potential precipitation of 2 to 8 inches of snow or more across southern Dakota and northern Nebraska. Blizzard conditions will also be possible at times, given the strong pressure gradient that is anticipated north of the surface low, making travel conditions absolutely horrendous. Afternoon highs could be as much as 80 degrees Celsius, that's 15 to 20 degrees Fahrenheit. And while we're talking about California and this storm out in the west, just to talk about the snow that's occurring also in the mountains, there's been a ton of it. And this story here talks a little bit about a cold front that pounded California with heavy rain Thursday has unleashed debris flows and fire-ravaged neighborhoods. Also left a blanket of snow on the mountains across the state. This is what we wait for all year. The storm dropped 4 to 8 inches of fresh snow in Big Bear Mountain. Forecasters expect a bit more snow along with chilly temperatures in the mid-60s with a slight drizzle in some Southern California cities over the weekend. And more footage of what this rain, flooding, flash flooding, the mudslides that were reported here. Evacuation orders in Los Angeles, Riverside, and Orange County that were issued in preparation for the storm have been lifted. Roads slick from rain also created chaos for commuters. So we get a little bit of mountain snow talked about here, plus with the rain. Again, we're still on watch for this as it may be drying out for now, but there's another low pressure system that's going to be hitting now and through the rest of the weekend. Talking a little bit more about the snow part of this. Parts of central Nebraska could see up to 18 inches of snow this weekend, says the National Weather Service. Parts of west central and north central Nebraska could see up to 18 inches of snow and winds gusting to 35 miles per hour before the weekend is over. Travel could be very difficult to impossible. Towns that could see the highest snowfalls could be Valentine, Ainsworth, O'Neill, and Thedford. Grand Island, Norfolk, and Kearney, Kansas all declared snow emergencies starting on Saturday morning. And let me tell you something, guys. Grand Island and Kearney, just from being a resident of Norton, Kansas a few years back, it takes a lot for the National Weather Service to declare snow emergencies in those counties because that's a frequent area where it gets this kind of snow during the winter. Not so much in November, but during the winter months. So they are expecting heavy amounts of snow to come in that area as well. Just a little bit of little personality touch here for the area, talking about how the people are going to be adjusting their schedules due to the snowstorm. And again, another heavy snowfall event happening across Nebraska, Kansas area. just to give you some ideas on how much we're going to see. North Platte, 6 to 8 inches. Stapleton, 8 to 12. Broken Bow, 8 to 12. Brewster, 12 to 18. Ainsworth, 12 to 18. Springview, 12 to 18. And Butte, South Dakota, we're looking at about, I believe that's South Dakota anyway, 12 to 18 inches. Forgive me if my geography is a little off here. So another blizzard possible here for the northern plain states this weekend for sure. And just a little bit of, I love, sometimes I read articles off the Washington Post for comedy reasons. And here we have an article. Snowfall shows a sharp long-term decline in the Washington region, but some trends are surprising. Picture of the last heavy snow the DC area saw was in 14. Also, when we saw those horrible polar vortexes in the Midwest. But this story starts off with the words, snowfall is declining in the DC region and has been for decades. The very first line. But yet, just 16 days prior to this story, we saw this headline. DC winter outlook for 2018-19. We predict snowier than normal conditions for the first time in 3 years. It's so funny how the Washington Post flip-flops just to whatever helps get them, views or reads on their page or whatnot. They got to go with whoever's going to watch, I guess. But the average snowfall in the DC area has fallen. Now, these are facts. We're talking about 13.9 inches is the average snowfall for the DC area as of late. But this winter, we're calling for that and then some. So the average looks like it's going to be between 22 and 30 inches of snowfall. Now, by any means, is this crushing any records in the Washington, D.C. area? I'm not trying to sit here and act like that it's going to be, the day after tomorrow in D.C. But, I mean, how does this newspaper exist when they write a paper just yesterday talking about how we're looking at declining snow rates? I see a jump in every certain years, and we're going to see that jump this year as well. I believe that. But they write all this about how we're down to 13.9 inches and that the records are being, by the way, the records are all coming from the airports, the dualies, where else? Every article they talk about where they record their record temperatures is at the airport, near the tarmac, near the runways, near where jet exhaust engines are there to warm things up a bit. So maybe not as much snow falls at the airport that it does, let's say out in the middle of the country, a rural area of DC, if there is such a thing. But it's just funny to me that we see, good old Washington Post up to their... This is just confusing people, if you ask me. Just 16 days earlier, they're talking about how we're going to see a heavy snow this winter. And there's no signs. So basically, according to this chart, we can see as much as 3 times the amount of snow that DC has been getting over the past several years. Now, I'll say this. The article before this, the one today, or the 29th, I'm sorry, the very end of this article, sorry for going so fast, but the very end of this article, it's like they're coaching you for the short term, which they know now the short term is going to be colder and more snowier. So it says down at the bottom, whatever the cause for the large snowstorms to defy the trends of their smaller cousins, it's perhaps something of a silver lining for the area's snow lovers. So, hey, don't worry about it, guys. This snow, sure it'll raise some of the records, but then they'll start to ease back again. That's what this article. So it's basically coaching people. Rapid Arctic warming and melting ice are increasing the frequency of blizzards in the Northeast, study finds. The only problem with this statement is that they're not mentioning the rapid freeze that also happens in the Arctic. And looking at this graph right here is a huge evidence of the rapid freeze that we're seeing right now in the Arctic. Look at this. Just in a short period of time, we started watching this ice growth, I think, right about here. And everyone was giving me so much crap because the line was so spread out from where we were, where they want us to be. That's where the average mean is. That's where they like to see healthy ice growth at. Now look at it. Look how much closer to that average mean we're getting, and right at the right time when things are starting to get cold in the northern hemisphere. But yet the Washington Post wants to tell you that the ice is melting. Rapid Arctic warming and melting ice are increasing for frequency of blizzards. Now, I will say this. When you have slightly warmer temps in the winter in the Arctic, that creates more water vapor. And when you have cooler temperatures in the Arctic in the summer, that also puts more water vapor in the atmosphere. So basically, when places like North America, when it receives the cold air, especially in the northeast United States, that's why we're going to be seeing more snow this year, is because of that factor alone. So there's going to be more snow for everybody, honestly. And I'll show you that here in our GFS forecast as well. I pulled up a couple other articles. I threw them in the description. I mean, they're already talking about snowfall amounts throughout early part. Look at this. Some are predicting 45 inches of snow near the DC area this winter. That's almost 5 times the amount of snow they get. So again, that article that was wrote on the 29th was there to help basically, yeah, we might get a couple good snowy seasons here and there, but don't worry guys, it's going to continue to decline. And I disagree. And we've actually seen snowfall increase over the past 2 winters. And this year's not going to be any different. So more smoke and mirrors from the left media. I don't know why we just can't tell the truth and get people ready for this. Because what you're doing by continuing to deny the truth about the climate and state that we're actually in, I think you're putting more lives at risk. And also, you're giving these conspiracy theorists the window of opportunity to say, oh, this is a part of some population control. They don't want to tell us about the cold weather so people die from this and they can kind of hit the reset. But, I mean, by the government denying what's really happening right now, you're kind of leaving that window for conspiracy open. So, I think there's way more harm being done right now by keeping this hoax alive. I know there's a lot of money involved from the government who's funding this research. And I also saw another comment, and I'm with whoever wrote this. I don't remember who. Yeah, no thanks. But they had mentioned how they wished that there was being real money thrown out to research global cooling like they do for global warming. Because I think we'd find a lot more, and we might have to get our tails in gear a little quicker. All we can hope for is that this administration and the future administrations to come will continue to deny the BS hoax of global warming and its man-made cause, and understand that this stuff happens on natural cycles. I want to bring this article up really quick, guys. I've seen a lot of talk on social media about GM cutting nearly 15,000 jobs. And they're going to stop making Chevrolet Volts, Chevy Cruze, and Impalas. Now, the Impala will still be sold overseas in certain markets. But the reason for GM to halt production on these particular models, and I can speak on this from my former knowledge of being in this career field in automobile industry, and I've worked at new car dealerships for Chevrolet. So 2 things that's important to mention about why these cars are going away. Number 1, the Chevrolet Impala. That car jumped up from being a mid $25,000 car to a low $30,000. Now you get one nicely equipped for $36,000, and I think you can go as high as 50 to 55,000 if you get the Impala SS. So one is cost. These vehicles cost way more now than they did when Impalas were actually one of the top-selling full-size sedans, passenger cars. So the cost of the Impala has gone through the roof. Nice car, but it should be on a luxury line if you've ever seen an LTZ Impala, newer model, 2014 and up. And then you got the Chevrolet Volt. I have seen one Chevrolet Volt from the 2 Chevrolet lots that I worked at in the course of 5 years been sold. One Volt. The Cruise, a good idea, but a junk product. A junk product. And I say this because I've had experiences where people get these cars and they come back after 60,000 miles, 100,000 miles, back again at 120,000, back again at 180,000. Yes, I know a lot of cars don't get that many miles. The Cruise, I've seen them with 275,000 miles on them, just 3 years old. People drive the crap out of them. But what does it say when 2 of the top gas-efficient vehicles that you make for your company are being X'd? Nobody's buying them. But no one's buying the Volt. Nobody cares for the Volt. Nobody wants the Volt because when the battery goes by, you spend somewhere between $5,000 and $8,000 to replace the battery. You can buy another used car for that kind of money. A good beater for a 6, 7, 8 year period of time for that kind of money. The Cruise, good on gas. Why isn't everybody driving one? They're actually better equipped. They replaced the Cavalier Cobalt lineup, and the Cruise came out with a little bit more modern, features on the car. Good on gas. Why is this going away? Again, no one's buying these cars. Forget about production and cost. No one's buying these cars. Why? For so many years we focused on gas saving. Saving on gas. Gas savers. Now they're making bigger engines with better gas mileage capabilities. And I think the message is starting to get through about emissions. More and more people understand that man-made emissions do not affect the climate, and therefore they're not as concerned about killing the climate with these so-called gas guzzlers. So the whole idea of having the Volt and the Cruise was for people to save money on gas and to help the environment, especially the Volt. The Volt was supposed to be, environment friendly. But what happened is that Chevrolet had to take a bath in the sales of the Volt. It crashed. It's nasty. It did not take off the way they wanted it to. In fact, if you had a Volt on your lot, it was because it was ordered 3 years ago. And the dealership owner would drop his pants all the way down to his ankles just to get it off his lot. So I can understand why the Volt's gone. A lot of it was because the sales were bad, a bad concept, and I think it's a sign that the American public really don't believe that their emissions from their little 4 or 6-cylinder engines are causing the ice caps to melt. I think they know that kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? That kind of contribution is too small. And the impact of how much they're paying for gas wasn't that important. Gas prices are a little bit lower than they used to be, but not where they could be. I heard somebody in Texas saying they're paying $1.84 in taxes right now, or for gas, a gallon. That's pretty damn cheap. It's went up a little bit here in upstate New York. I think it's down to $2.59. It has been at $2.89 for almost 2 years in this part of the state that I know of. But before we go ripping into GM too much, they are simply taking a step back and looking at the market. Are people buying these economy-efficient cars? The answer is no. Because the American public is not willing to sacrifice what they love the most, and that's power. That ability to hit the gas if you're getting ready to get hit in traffic. I had to witness today, because of a car that has 0 power, 4 cylinders, you have to drive like you're going to get hunted in a car like that. You can't be aggressive. You can't put the foot down on the gas because chances are a car that small with a small engine is not going to have the power, even if you gun it, to push that car out fast enough to get out of harm's way. That's not safe. And if that's what I have to drive to save the environment, I mean, geez, no wonder they're not selling. I mean, we live in a world where people have to do it now. Everybody's in a hurry. You got to go. You got to go. It's fast-paced. I can speak from experience. I work a full-time job. I do this channel broadcast 4 times a week. And guys, I wish I could do it more. I just don't. There's not enough time in the week. Mari can tell you that. So, I know there's a lot of flack going towards GM right now. A lot of hate. And nobody likes losing jobs. But I just feel like that, you know, we should all take a step back and just look at the product that they're cutting out of their lineup. It's not that they're purposely taking jobs away from Americans because GM's an evil corporation. It's because their bottom line isn't looking that good, and there's some vehicles that are hurting them, and these are it. The Volt, that's got to go. I've been saying that since 16. As a car salesman back in the day, if I was in the business now, I'd be happy about this. I'm not happy about 15,000 people losing their job over time, but you know there are severance packages being prepared for these employees with their skills and trades. If they were able to obtain a position at GM, hopefully there is something else out there for them that they'll be able to obtain another position for. I'm always a firm believer when one door shuts, another one opens. And I hope and pray that's the case for these GM workers, because it's not going to happen all at once. They're talking about closing these plants by the end of 2019. So this is not an immediate thing. So much could happen between now and 2019. Maybe the president finds some kind of a incentive package deal to keep these plants open to manufacture different parts for other cars. Who knows? So much could happen right now. But I'm going to say this, and you know, I have no reason to defend the car business. I'm not in it anymore. But I can tell you that these cuts from GM's lineup are due to because of poor sales and because the American public has spoken. Gas-saving cars are not the answer anymore. People are not interested in that anymore. I think more people are more convinced over the years that this man-made global warming theory is getting thinner and thinner. Temperatures are going way down, and we're not driving these gas-saving cars anymore. But the temperatures are still cooling. I thought we were supposed to be warming if we're putting more emissions in the atmosphere. And we are. If we're not driving these small cars, that means we are putting more CO2 emissions in the atmosphere. But yet we're cooling. That was my point of this, bringing this article up, because I think some people, and even the president, might be taking a political angle of this. And I don't agree with what he's doing. There's a lot of Americans who believe that GM should have to repay their bailout. I agree. That was taxpayer money. Whether or not they're shutting these plants down or not, they should still be on the hook for that. But let's not villainize GM. I mean, they are a corporation. Donald Trump knows everything about running a corporation, and surely he's had some bumps in the road too. That's all I'm saying, guys. This is clearly, to me, this is a business decision based on poor sales. And 2, not as many people as you would think are thinking about driving gas savers anymore. Prices are going down in gas, and I think people are starting to believe that this man-made nonsense is garbage. Another article I found today in our Grand Solar Minimum Closed group on Facebook. Global cooling is real, major temperature low by 2046. Thank you for everyone who has stuck with me on this program. There's been a lot to talk about, but this was the article that I really wanted to feature for tonight's show, but there really was just way too much going on. I got to get a drink. Hang on a second. Okay, so I'm going to read most of this article. It says here, while NASA has now confirmed that the outer atmosphere is getting cooler, it seems desperately insane for people to keep denying the possibility of global cooling is taking place rather than global warming when the former brings famine and the latter brings economic expansion as civilizations will rise. The rise of the Rome was due to global warming, as was the case after the Dark Age when they had the medieval warming period, which was from 950 to 1300 AD. The concern from just a technical model perspective is that the warming period we had post 1600 and the low of the Little Ice Age has not exceeded that of the medieval warming period. If we simply look at this chart from a technical perspective, it appears that more we are in a grand downtrend for the past 6,000 years. And you have to agree with this graph. We see the severity of these cold snaps. Here we are. Egyptian Empire, the peak of it, huge warming period, and then a slightly colder than the last period, and so forth and so on. We haven't seen a strong warming period in quite some time. This is the medieval warming period. And believe it or not, folks, this is where we were with our warming. We're now declining into that cooling. Now, my biggest argument when it comes to climate debate is how we had less CO2 right here where my arrow is right now in this period. And look, we have almost double the CO2 in our atmosphere. Even at the peak, we still were not as warm as we were in the medieval warming period. So what's wrong with this theory on global man-made global warming? We're at highest CO2 levels, higher than the medieval warming period, but yet we're still not as warm as we were during that period. Let's continue to read on here. They're giving some examples in this article. In Australia, with 1 week from summer, it's still snowing in Victoria. In fact, one of the top NASA scientists has broken camp and warned that the surface temperature of the sun has collapsed so much he fears a new ice age is upon us. Now, guys, this is not a coincidence. This article was published November 27th by Martin Armstrong. Meanwhile, this has been the coldest Thanksgiving in 150 years. We discussed that as well. But another NASA scientist is now coming out and saying, we're not warming, we're getting cold. And Tony Phillips even used the terminology of record-breaking space age cold records. Goes on saying, what we must understand is that this has gone beyond just breaking records for one-day events. This time around, it's not just the severity of the cold that's getting to people. It's also the duration. The most reliable computer model projections have shown that the Arctic air has moved all the way down into Texas. We're seeing that right now. Indeed, here in Tampa, the temperature is about 10 degrees below normal at times, and this is as of November 27th. The decline in the energy output of the sun has been far more rapid than most expected. This could perhaps be a warning, that a sign that we will make a new lower low, or retest the low temperatures on a sustained basis that match the Little Ice Age. And I think a lot of folks in the Grand Solar Minimum community will agree on one thing, that we are looking at modern minimum type conditions in the near future. But reading on in this article, the post office even issued commemorative stamps in 1976, noting that the winter event, Washington and his troops suffered more in Morristown, New Jersey during the hard winter of 79 and 80. Violent snowstorms had battered the Northeast. Both Boston and New York harbors were completely frozen over. The weather made it impossible to bring supplies to the men, many of them who had no coats or even shoes. They couldn't even eat for days at a time. Soldiers finally mutinied in early May, though an officer persuaded them to abandon their rebellion. Just as the weather had defeated Napoleon, weather nearly defeated the American Revolution. 1779 through 1780. Very, very cold winters. But here we go. This bottom paragraph really kind of bugs me a little bit. I'm a believer that 2030 is the beginning of the grand minimum. there are also other people that think that we could even see even a weaker 26 cycle before we get to the grand minimum, which could start around 2043. Check this out. If the trend continues the next winter, then we have exceeded any short-term reactionary trend, and weather appears poised to continue to get colder going into the distant future. Socrates was projecting the peak of this cycle aligned with the ECM 2015 of 3/4 of the way through. This is a longitudinal cycle, not traverse. That means peak to bottom varies. The short-term wave could be a 13-year decline from 2015, making it 2028 initially. After that, if we see colder winters beyond 2028, then the next low will be with the peak in the ECM of 2032. There is a serious risk that we are looking at the final low coming in the period of 2046. Guys, I'll leave the link in the description. I know I kind of jumbled a few words here, but a lot of this is kind of hard to take in, because if you follow Grand Solar Minimum community, Ralph Witche, who does a very good job at presenting facts about the possibilities of an ice age after 2050. I know a lot of us here, including myself, possibly won't see that in 2050. Thankfully, because I hate being cold. But what this article to me is echoing what I'm saying here at the Grand Solar Minimum, along with many other people in the community. Even though we are not, and I believe this to be true, that 2030 is when we'll really see the Grand Solar Minimum kick in. I do believe, since we're seeing these signs of a cycle 25, that we will see another weak cycle before we head at least into the Grand Solar Minimum by the 2030s. There's evidence out there that would support the 2040s as well. But what I've been saying is just because that the Grand Solar Minimum itself event won't happen until the 2030s, we're still part of this trend of decreasing solar activity, and we'll continue to see that decline this cycle and possibly next cycle if there is another cycle. So by any means, even when we get to a solar maximum in this cycle, if that even happens, it's a possibility. It's just so weak that it's neutral. The max could be 50 sunspots. There's some people out there who think, or there's a couple of people out there who think that we're going to have double the sunspot activity that we had in 24. And I like what Ben said. He called it naive, and it is a naive. Especially when you have people like Valentina Zarkova, who's coming out and telling us about a super grand solar minimum. Forget about grand solar minimum. She's talking about super grand solar minimum. And when you see the word serious risk, that we are looking at a final low coming in the period of 2046, what do you think that means? The final low. The bottom. The peak of this cold. So, articles like this, I think, really help give us a good idea of the big picture of what we're looking at in the near future. And this decade is not going to be any walk in the park. The 2020s are going to be rough. We are looking at a minimum lasting possibly through 2023 to 2025 before we start seeing an uptick in solar activity again. Solar cycle 25 has been predicted as one of those unknowns. And unfortunately, like we've done here in the last couple of years of the Grand Solar Minimum, we're just going to have to keep waiting. Because each year you get a better idea of the upcoming forecasts of what the long term could be. I know for us doing this channel as serious as we've done for the last 2 years, I've seen the change in the data, not just the headlines, but in the data. And each year, just like here, the sunspot totals. Right here, they show the previous minimum. 2009 was the absolute bottom. Right now, our numbers are, if you had to compare them, the sunspot numbers, they are that of 2007, two years before the actual peak of the minimum. And we're crushing those numbers. 2007 was 152 spotless days for the year. We're going to be at 200 days. So we're going to have 2 more years, 2019, 2020, 2021, lots of spotless days. Some folks think that we might actually see it like that for a lot longer. But the next 2 to 3 years, our winters, we're definitely going to notice a big change. Now, when we do start seeing that uptick again for a maximum of the cycle, it's not going to be like it was in 2012 and 13 and 14. We're not going to see that kind of heat. It's going to feel okay. But when the bottom starts dropping out again, and it won't have as far to go this time, we're also going to notice that too the latter part of the next decade. In the mid-2025, 2026 was when we'll start seeing the downfall once again towards another minimum, and what some believe and myself believe that 2030s will usher us into the grand solar minimum and beyond, where you hear the term super grand solar minimum, which we're still looking at the information that Zarkova put out and still trying to digest that. Super grand solar minimum does not sound like something I want to mess with. So it's very important that we everybody help keep the integrity of this topic and try to teach each other as much as we can, because there's going to come a time and a day where we can't rely on flipping on YouTube and getting the information that we're used to getting on a regular basis. Alright, so let's take a look at the national radar. As we showed you earlier, it's a mess right now. Wendy will show us that we've got snow showers all the way back to the northwest. Another low pressure system entering Northern California. Snow in Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico. And then we have approaching snowstorms for Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, as they're just now getting into their moisture. And then we have 2 bouts of storms going through the south. And luckily, thankfully, the northeast and the eastern part of the United States is relatively quiet. Taking a look at the sea surface temperatures in the North Atlantic, staying just below baseline at 0.019 below the threshold. Let's take a look at El Nino first before we move any further. And El Nino is dropping once again. We saw it get to a value of 0.8 above 0, which was also a value of 0.3 above the threshold for an El Nino. Take a look at the temperatures out in that region. Let's zoom in just a little bit. Nope, not that. Here we go. And we have seen a little bit of an increase across this region right here, especially back here. We've got 2 29s where we had 29, 28, 28, 27, 27. So a little bit warmer back through here. Got a 30 in the middle in this other region as well. So we'll continue to watch El Nino, but the up and down consistency right now is that it's staying at the threshold of the 0.5 above 0, which is 28 degrees Celsius, and right now is forming a very weak Modoki El Nino. Here is the look at the GFS. Massive low pressure system. Again, blizzard conditions for parts of Nebraska, Iowa, northwestern Iowa. And this is going to turn into a rain event on December 2nd across the Ohio Valley in the eastern part of the United States. Southeast, that snow lingers in there for 24 hours or more in Iowa, Dakotas, and Kansas, Nebraska, into Wisconsin, into the UP of Michigan, up there in Interlochen and Traverse City. And that will bring more cold air to the United States after this storm on Monday, December 3rd. Lake effect snow starting up once again for New York. And like this thing does every once in a while, I don't get a full forecast. This is only taking me out to the 4th. So bear with me real quick. Let me see if I can load up another map and try to get us past December 4th. This has happened way too often and frequent. And folks, I do apologize. I don't think the GFS is going to let me go past the 4th. Well, that's awesome. Appreciate that, GFS. Tropical tidbits. We'll try one more time before I give up on this and move along. We do have a lot of cold weather in the near future. And again, guys, I do apologize. I'm trying to get the situation fixed. I can take you through Wendys Plot and what they think is going to happen over the next few days. This will take us up to Sunday, December 9th. And that moisture will spread across into the Mississippi Valley, Iowa, Nebraska. There's a fire emergency out here. Look at the trail of snow behind this from Canada all the way into North Platte, Omaha, Iowa City to Green Bay. Just a huge swath of snow. And like I said, the Northeast is mainly going to see rain out of this event, and it moves out pretty quick. But the back end is going to bring in colder air, which is going to bring snow showers across the most of the United States, especially across the Midwest into the Plain States as we move into Monday. Temperatures rise a little bit on Monday afternoon, but here the GFS is showing us on windy.com that we're going to see some snow showers into Monday into Tuesday. So definitely a little bit different scenario for temperatures as we see the winds primarily coming from the northwest here in the northeast. So that will bring in a lot more colder Arctic air and more chances for snow in the Ohio Valley into Wednesday, and also developing even more into the next day, Thursday, as temperatures will continue to drop. And the Northeast, the Midwest, will all have a good shot at some light snow in the mid part of the first part of December, as another low pressure system moves across from the Midwest, once again bringing lots of snow. So we could see a potential late week snow storm next week, December 7th into the 8th and 9th, as not only do we get a low pressure system moving across the country, but it looks like lake effect snow is coming in as well from Canada. And then there's this possibility right here. If this low pressure system can keep its act together and rake the coast like it's indicating, it just depends on where we're looking at right now. We're about 10 days out from this forecast. Those of you who live in New York and north, right now we're out of the radar for that. No snow event from this. But look out, DC. This might be a major snowstorm for you guys. And the cold temperatures are going to support any kind of snowfall that will accumulate. But you also have to look at the winds that we're going to get from this storm. This could be a nor'easter. This is too far out to see it now, but this could be something we need to keep our eyes out in the next 10 to 15 days, folks, as we've heard a lot of rumblings from a lot of weather amateur out there who talk about a big snowstorm coming by the second week of December. Let's see if our GFS now, the snowfall total probably won't go up very far. Here we are on the 4th. And as we get further into December, we get more snow cover. Look at that. So mainly the Midwest and the Plain States, we're looking at the most. The Northeast kind of gets a timeout. You get a little bit of a break from the snowfall. But that's predicted to change after the 10th, 12th, 13th, and 14th of December. We're expected another polar vortex and the possibility of another snow system. But I think right now, the nor'easter that could be is right here. And this is Sunday, December 9th. And as of right now, if you live in the Northeast, you're looking good. DC folks, not so much. Pennsylvania, not so much. New York City could very easily get in on the snow totals as well because of how far south they are. And this will actually bring persistent snows to those areas. So the coastal parts of the Northeast may get some effects from this storm. And again, it just depends on where that high is, if this storm will actually rake the coast or will it go up to the Atlantic. Still a lot to be determined between now and then, but we will definitely keep our eyes on this potential weather system that could be forming here in the next several days. We'll do a broadcast on Sunday night and kind of touch base. Hopefully our tools are working once again from the GFS. Maybe we can get a better look in the next couple of weeks. But now I want to take a little time to get Mari over here real quick. See if she'd like to say hello to everyone in the chat. And
absolutely.
Appreciate her hard work that she does here for the Grand Solar Minimum channel, guys.
I do work hard, don't I, G?
Oh, yeah.
I've been stepping it up on social media and communications. I'm pretty proud of myself, so hopefully you guys see it. You know, what's more important is you guys. I can't believe what I see on social media. Thank you, genuinely, for sharing the information we share and also participating in the conversation. The links you share with us, we forward on to the whole community. So your input is... Whoa,
which one you're using.
What you doing? Hey, John. It's John Casey you're playing there.
Sorry.
Your participation in the conversation is so important. I'm working on renovating the website for a relaunch. I'm not sure when it's I'm gonna just say it's a new year thing. And the things I have planned for the website are very exciting. What we have going on in our Facebook group, the people that are just contributing in the chat is awesome. And it's grown considerably over the past few weeks. Thank you. It's all thanks to you guys.
Yeah, I definitely want to thank our new subscribers again. Dylan, if you're listening tonight, thanks a lot for tuning in. A lot of people are getting interested in this topic. So I'm surprised to see the new participation as well. And go ahead, Mari.
I'm sorry. Also, I want to thank the people who donated to Super Chat. Rob did not one, but two.
Thanks,
you
Rob.
Show off, Rob.
Right.
Such a show off. And Justin L., top guy. I mean, always contributing. Thank you.
Yep.
Well, very humbled by that. Jim Nelson says he thinks he saw a tornado warning in Oklahoma a few minutes ago. So I'm not sure about that, or if you can tell anything about that.
We did have, I know we had some severe weather alerts going across, and if you guys look at the radar right now, I mean, this looks like something you'd see in late July. These strong thunderstorm cells that are moving through right now. So would not be surprised if indeed we are dealing with, I mean, look at how much intensification we're looking at here in the last few frames. So that would not surprise me if we have a tornado warning. Real quick, guys, I want to show you a new this is the beginning, but if you go to our website, Mari has now found a way to, let's just say, make it a lot easier to get to our YouTube channel from the website, thegrandsolarminimum.com. Now, this is just the beginning of some of the changes that she's doing to the website, but all you have to do is take your mouse and take it to the video that you want to see and click on it, and it takes you directly to the top videos of the channel, also some of the latest ones that we've done. So, again, just another tool to help you in your research, and maybe there was a video that you hadn't seen in a while that pops up on this screen. Just another easy way to access our YouTube channel as well. Check us out. We're on Patreon, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, YouTube. Guys, we really appreciate the support we continue to get from this channel. You guys are awesome out there. We want to thank all of our mods for taking time out of their Friday night, spending a little bit with us. Guys, we appreciate that. We will be back Sunday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Time with another Grand Solar Minimum News update. Until then, guys, unless something else happens in Alaska or even Hawaii, wherever we're watching right now, we will come through with breaking news when needed. Guys, thank you for tuning in once again. And we are now signing out for the evening. I hope everybody has a great weekend, and we'll talk soon.